Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending upon the place of the planet that you are today, right now. We send a warm greeting from a jar and welcome all our sisters and brothers from India and from abroad that are joining us today for this celebration of Annie Besant's birthday. Now I invite Shikar to open the meeting with the universal invocation. Please, Shikar, over to you.
Thank you, Catalina. Namaste to everyone and hearty greetings from Adyar. Let us come together in heart and mind to invoke that immutable principle, the spark of which resides in each and every one of us. In the words of Dr. Annie Besant. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. Over to you, Catalina.
Thank you, Shikar. Well, now it's my pleasure to welcome Sister Marja Artama, our International Secretary, who will give us some welcome words, and she will introduce as well our today's speaker, Mr. Pedro Oliveira. Please, Marja.
Thank you. Dear members and dear friends of Theosophy, I wish you a pleasant, special day to all who are joining us in Zoom from all over the world and later watching the recorded video. Today, on 1st October 2021, we celebrate Annie Besant's birthday. She would be 174 years if she were still physically with us. She was born in Ireland, yet for 40 years, she regarded India her homeland. From her life of 86 years, she passed away in India. Her work has been so remarkable that it is really worth to keep up in people's awareness how important role she had in India's freedom, home rule, and also on the growth of the Theosophical Society. She was the second international president of the TS. She worked for women's rights and for empowering the education of girls and boys. She was one of the founders of Benares Hindu University, Young Men's Indian Association, and of Women's Indian Association. We call it WIA. And I am so glad to know that the president and some members from WIA are attending this event as attendees. I want to say a little thing about, or show something about WIA, because it had its centenary celebration at its birthplace, which was Adyar, in 1917. So in 2017, this association came to Adyar and brought with them in the program was very distinguished guests like the President of India at that time, Pranab Mukherjee. I share with you a picture on that because This shows the respect that distinguished persons have towards Annie Besant. Here is the President of India bowing in front of the founders of the Women's Indian Association. This association also gave us a marble plaque, and it is situated on the wall of our headquarters building here. This picture is from one of the Annie Besant birthday celebrations at ADR headquarters hall, with Annie Besant's picture in front of the founders of the TS. In the city of Chennai, there is a 13-kilometer long Marina Beach. It means 8.1 miles long Marina Beach, with Annie Besant's statue on it along the beach. And we find it nowadays colored in yellow and in gold. It used to be like we here on the right side as a black, I don't know the material, but it was maybe 5 or 7 years, I don't remember, ago, when the city had painted it in gold. It seems to be the habit in Chennai that the statues of persons, great persons, the city will paint them in gold. And here we see actually the cover of the book, which is published by Pedro Oliveira, our guest speaker today, and we'll come that later. So there are several places in India where Annie Besant's name can be recognized, and it is good because now the new generations have that name in their minds, and they hopefully also sometimes study about Annie Besant and what she did. Many roads and gardens are named after her. Many schools are named after her around India and also elsewhere. And in the Theosophical Society, we have Besant Memorial Animal Dispensary, which it has become very famous nowadays. Just to mention some of the current time. Annie Besant wrote over 1,000 articles and 300 books, and we don't know how many speeches, must be a lot, enormous. She was much loved theosophist, speaker, and influencer. But let us go forward in today's program. Today we have a special speaker from Australia, Mr. Pedro Oliveira, who has written a book called Annie Besant in India. And on this, he will elaborate his talk on testimonies of her Indian co-workers. I'm sure it will be interesting and important us to know about this aspect too. So let me introduce him. Pedro Oliveira, born in Brazil, but having Australian citizenship, and he is living in Australia. He joined the TS in 1978, same year as me, and has worked for it in several capacities. He served as the International Secretary at the Society's international headquarters at Adyar, Chennai, India, from 1992 to 1996. He worked as education coordinator of the TS in Australia. He has been the president of the Indo-Pacific Federation of the TS. And he was also the officer in charge of the editorial office at the international. Pedro Oliveira has lectures extensively in many countries on perennial wisdom, spirituality, mysticism, and comparative religion, etc. He is the author of at least 3 books. One of them is N. Sri Ram, A Life of Beneficence and Wisdom. The second book is CWL Speaks, C.W. Leadbeater's correspondence concerning the 1906 crisis in the Theosophical Society. And the latest book of today is Besant in India, on which his talk is based today. His articles have appeared in a number of the Society's international journals. Now let us welcome Pedro to give his talk.
Thank you very much, Maria, and greetings from Australia to all of you. This is a very special occasion, as Maria mentioned, and I think that we would all agree that it has been an honor for the Theosophical Society to have had Annie Besant as its president. One of the American authors, very well known, Ralph Waldo Emerson, once wrote, "What you do speaks so loudly that I cannot hear what you say." And when I came across this statement, it reminded me of Annie Besant. She had an enormous impact on India, on different generations of Indians, as you will see. She never tried to convince people of her opinion, but she presented her opinion vigorously, and her opinion was based on her assessment of what truth is. She declared once that the only epitaph she wanted on her tomb was, "She tried to follow truth." When I was collecting these excerpts, and I was trying to understand the impact that she had on many Indians, including young Indians, since she came to India in 1893, I tried to understand how she could have this lasting impact, and at the same time, how she could persevere for so long, in spite of opposition. We will also see that. And I came across this statement by one of the eminent Indian members of the Theosophical Society, T. Subba Rao, who is very well known in his writings. And he said that anybody who attempts to tread the spiritual path will meet pitfalls, tests, or challenges. And some of them can bring the candidate down, because the path really means a movement of self-confrontation, and not many people in the world seem to be prepared for that. But he said there is a talisman that will protect the worthy candidate. And he said that this talisman is a perfectly unselfish, self-forgetting, self-annihilating devotion to the religious good of humanity, a self-abnegation which is not temporal, but must have no end forever, and the object of which is the religious enlightenment of the human race. I haste to clarify that he was not talking about organized religion. Both he and Madame Blavatsky agreed Sometimes they disagreed, but they agreed that from a theosophical point of view, religion is that awareness of the radical unity of all life, of all humanity. That is the true religious feeling, and that can lead to the regeneration of the human mind. So let us consider some of the testimonies given by Dr. Besant in this. This is from a publication called Annie Besant, Servant of Humanity, from the New India staff. She founded New India in 1914 in Madras, and the staff put this together, and they invited some people to contribute to this special issue. One of the contributors, as you will see, is Brother N. Sri Ram. One of the contributors, Mr. Krishna Das, who was one of the participated in the whole home rule movement that Dr. Besant started in 1914, he said, she has known by personal experience the pangs of starvation. Her earnings after separation from her husband were at first so small that they were only enough to buy food for two. That means her two children, but not enough to buy it for three, which means she would go without food. Yet, she has never cared for money except as a means of liberally helping the poor. The poor students from Brahmana to Adi Dravida, whom she has helped when she and her paper, New India, were popular and prosperous, must be counted by hundreds. The net cash balance to her personal credit at the end of each year was always practically nil. Of far more value than mere gifts of money was the heartfelt sympathy and the wise and practical advice which accompany her gifts, so that the recipients were never demoralized and the power of self-help in them was strengthened. The exact number of Indian students who have been helped by her when they were in difficulties in the British Isles will never be known. But many such students who are now in good positions have spoken to me with gratitude for such help rendered to them by her while they were in utter despair. So she helped thousands of people. Another contributor is Kali Charan Roy, the editor of the Tribune Lahore. This was when Lahore was part of India. That means this is obviously pre-1947. He said, to me, the most remarkable thing about the illustrious woman of versatile genius and of many-sided activities is the completeness with which she has identified herself for these many years with the uplift of a people with whom she had originally nothing in common. The history of the world records no other instance of a gifted and accomplished woman who could have made her mark in so many ways in her own country and among her own people, sacrificing her prospects in life, her ease and comfort to serve a distant and alien people. No one has done more or even as much to make Indian home rule the battle cry of a united nation as Mrs. Besant. It was literally like a meteor. She rose in India's political sky, and the splendor with which she shone for a time seems to overshadow all other workers, with the exception of Tilak himself. Nor was hers a service of mere intellect. She was one of those, then not too many, who stood equally the test of sacrifice and suffering, the most crucial of all tests. She was the personification of India's unquenchable desire an undying determination to be free. She is the heart, the head, and the soul of that determination. During her life, Dr. Besant had some differences of opinion with the Hindu newspaper. This is historically established. You can see this if you peruse a book called A Short History of the Theosophical Society by Josephine Ranson. And the editor of the Hindu was invited to contribute also a piece on Dr. Besant's. This is all about the 50-year anniversary of her public work. She started her public work in 1874, and this was published in 1924. So the editor of the Hindu was Mr. S. Rangaswamy Iyengar. He said, in Dr. Besant's record, you find no ears that the locusts have eaten, for they have been years of chivalrous championship of the underdog, years dedicated to making the world saner, purer, and happier. It has been her experience in India when she directed her activities to securing our political emancipation in a few short years to reach both the zenith and the nadir of her popularity. She faced unpopularity with the heart, sorrow-stricken perhaps, but undismayed. Unremitting energy, patience, infinite faith, and indomitable courage are the qualities which ought to make some appeal to people who are perhaps inclined to be fretful, impatient for results. To the impatient, to the faint of heart, to whom the path is thorny and the journey a weariness of spirit, Dr. Besant's record of achievement and service will serve as a beacon light of hope and encouragement. So even her opponents could give her the necessary justice of appraisal about a work well done. And another contributor who was associated with New India, V. Ramadas, wrote, "The Theosophical Educational Trust and the Society for the Promotion of National Education, organized by her, afford clear proof of her true insight into the real educational needs of the country. She did much more than what a single individual can do to promote them, and the blame for not making them as successful as she wished them to become rests on us, for whose benefit she launched the schemes." And here comes a very important point. Mrs. Besant then saw that the fight for India's freedom could never be carried to a successful issue unless we had a united Congress, the Indian National Congress, which was one of the founders of the Indian National Congress was Alan Octavian Hume, who is mentioned in the Mahatma letters to Mr. A.P. Sinnett. But the Congress was not united. She exerted all her influence to bring the moderates and the extremists together at Madras in 1914. She used her political clout, so to speak. And she said, "India claims the right as a nation to justice among the peoples of the empire. India asked for this before the war. India asked for it during the war. India will ask for it after the war, but not as a reward, but as a right that she asks for it. On that, there must be no mistake." She was convinced that India needed to have her freedom, her own government, She couldn't flourish without that. And here comes someone who was very close to her. He was a close worker, and he would travel with her. He would help to organize her meetings. He was profoundly touched by her. His name was Jamnadas Dwarkadas. He was also very much part of the Home Rule movement and New India. This is what he wrote. She said to me once, you know that to serve India, my master's motherland, is the greatest privilege and joy of my life. She loves India with a devotion which is hard to comprehend, and yet she did not hesitate to risk her popularity and incur the displeasure of the people she loves most for the sake of her principles. It is remarkable that in her own person, she gives us an example of what this blending is likely to accomplish. With the industry, energy, organizing power, capacity for continuous work and application for which the West stands, is blend the knowledge of the God within and the consequent strength, power, joy, and peace that passeth understanding, for which the East, represented by India, stands. The result is marvelous. It has given to the world Annie Besant, a personality unique in the present generation, a great internationalist, a great champion of brotherhood, of freedom. She strives for India's freedom because she believes that unless India grows to her fullest stature by means of freedom, she will not be able to give her quota of spirituality to the world civilization. The denial of freedom to India would be a loss not so much to India, but to the world. A great leader, a great inspirer, a great servant of the world, a great seer, a great thinker, a loyal friend, a brave fighter. Annie Besant is what she is because she is the follower of the great ideal of truth. Another newspaper from Madras, recognizing her contribution, is the Madras Mail. And the chief reporter of the Madras Mail was Diwan Bahadur C.V. Muniswamy Iyer. And this is what he wrote. She staggered Indian leaders with the profundity and depth of her knowledge and grasp of the religious beliefs and philosophical tenets. Proud as Indians are, brought up in the traditions of their enlightened orthodoxy, which in matters of philosophy and religion gave them liberty of thought almost amounting to liberty of free thought, they flocked to listen to Mrs. Besant's exposition of their philosophy and religion. It is unthinkable that she could have virtually walked into the wisdom treasures of the East as she has done without her equipment, which can only be explained by the doctrines of karma and reincarnation. That's a polite way of saying that Dr. Besant was an old soul. Within a year of her arrival in India, she came to be acknowledged as the one soul possessing the necessary previous preparation, equipment, and all the absorbing passion to lead India back to her days of pristine purity and religion, philosophy and social practices. Her admiration for the past of this land, her love for its ancient wisdom and historical traditions, and social and religious ideals are born of an unerring insight and grasp of the fundamental universal principles on which they are based. India has found no one critic more loving to her best points and more fearless in the exposure of centuries of evils which have gathered around her pristine foundations than Dr. Besant. This is precisely what she did with the Bharat Samaj Puja. She studied many Hindu rituals extensively, and she compiled what was the best in them. And she used her insight of writing it. She had advice of trusted pundits and Indian scholars, and then the Bharat Samaj Puja was created. And we have this wonderful temple, Jyoti temple at Adyar, in which the puja is celebrated every morning. And then Mr. Muniswami Iyer concludes his tribute by saying, if love and service are passports to the heart of the people, no one can say with greater justification than Mrs. Besant, adapting the words of the Upanishads, I am she, that means India, and she is myself. Mr. Y. Prasad was the secretary of the Theosophical Educational Trust, which was formed by Dr. Besant. He said, as Mr. Bipin Chandra Pal said, Dr. Besant is not a personality, but an idea. It's a very fortunate way of expressing it. Dr. Besant is not a personality, but an idea. She's not only an idea, but an ideal to thousands all over the world. Many may not follow her, but all admire her. To me and many others in early life, had the privilege of coming into contact with Dr. Besant and her work. She has been the pole star of our training, our work and achievement. Public praise or blame of our work has counted for nothing if the work has been along the line set down by her. She started the Central Hindu College to keep the sacred fire of Hinduism burning in its purity in the whole city of Kashi, that means Varanasi. He concludes by saying, such benefactors of humanity but appear in the world at intervals of centuries. So for us to find such a person in incarnation is not that easy. Now, this is a special testimony because he also worked very closely with her, and he was very well known. He was the principal of Queen's College in Benares, and his name is B. Sanjeeva Rao. We do have members of the TS in India who knew him. He said, Dr. Besant once wrote, but this physical means of regeneration cannot succeed unless they flow down as the lowest means of the spiritual ideal, and the unifying of India must be founded on and permeated by a spiritual life recognized as a supreme good, as the highest goal. If India could be regenerated, if India could be purified, if India could be re-spiritualized, then the nation as a whole, with her spiritual faculties, her intellectual powers, her ideally perfect social organization, would stand forth in the eyes of the world as the priest people of humanity. Dr. Besant wrote about this, and she wrote this more than once. She considered India as the spiritual mother of the world. And she had great hopes for India. And then Mr. Sanjeeva Rao adds a personal comment, his own personal comment. He said, there is something pathetic in her love for the Indian people. She bears with extraordinary serenity the opposition and foul abuse that has been heaped upon her, and yet she is so sensitive to the kindness and gratitude of her people that she is moved to her very depths by the smallest expressions of it. For she loves India and her people with deep and passionate intensity. The very soil is sacred to her. She is Indian in everything but her body, and that she has placed upon the altar of the motherland, so that through her sacrifice, the East and the West may realize themselves as one, and English and Indian may work together as comrades and brothers in a great and common work. We know not how to thank her for the benediction of her presence. Our hearts can only bow down in prayer that she may receive the reward of her magnificent work in the gratitude of the motherland, to one who through the centuries to come will be known and remembered as her faithful servant. I would like to conclude by presenting the testimony of her assistant editor of New India, more or less a young man at that time, Nilakantan Sriram. During the last 50 years, she has rendered unexampled services to mankind in so many different directions. She has been the champion of every good cause, yet her life has been one of many ups and downs, many struggles. Even during the last 10 years of her concentrated service to India in the cause of her adopted motherland's freedom, heights of popularity have been succeeded by depths of misrepresentation, prejudice, and hostility. Not to speak of lack of support from those for whose sake she was fighting. Yet through it all, our dear leader has ever been the same. Her eyes fixed on the goal she perceives to be essential for India and for the welfare of the world, pursuing the most direct and shortest means to reach it. Her policy dictated by the clearest insight and wisdom and undeflected by passing popular breezes, amounting sometimes to hurricanes, and working the whole time in magnificent energy and unfaltering courage. Dr. Besant translated the Bhagavad Gita, and one of the fundamental teachings of the Bhagavad Gita is Sthita Prajna, the stable mind, the mind that remains the same in honor or dishonor, success or failure, the mind that never gets enmeshed in the process of experiences, but understands each experience. Such was the mind of Dr. Besant. Mr. Sriram continues, the dominant motive of all her activity is compassion, a divine sympathy for the weak, the oppressed, the suffering, all who lack opportunity for growth and happiness. From this never-ceasing fountain of sympathy and compassion flow the fertilizing streams of her service in every direction. She expects no return in the shape of appreciation or any other, but she is too tender-hearted and sympathetic not to respond with an increased endeavor to help those who give her gratitude and affection. Because compassion is the essence of her being, and true compassion takes the form of service, all her joy is in work and in nothing else. Everything dear to her, even the closest of personal relations, she sacrifices if need be, without a moment's hesitation, for the sake of the work, which she means the good and the happiness of all. In her personal relation, she is the very soul of gentleness, adapting herself to the needs and peculiarities of others, always full of comprehension, tenderness, and even as it strikes me, reverence for those who are far below her in every respect. Somebody once discovered that Dr. Besant was employing a former convict as her cook. And this person asked her, I was told that your cook is a former convict. And he expressed surprise. And because, you know, even today, if a person is a former convict, you don't find a job so easily. And Dr. Besant said, yes, he's a former convict, and he has been with me for 25 years. And that speaks well for both of us. She has eyes only for the good points about others, except it is necessary, except when it's necessary, either in order to help them or for the sake of the work, to take note of undesirable ones. In her political campaign, she has hit hard and perseveringly, where others have shrunk from a selfish regard for personal interests or popularity, yet always openly, impersonally, chivalrously, without the slightest feeling of ill will towards her opponents, and without attributing to them any derogatory motives. Personal attacks were a constant in her life from different quarters, sometimes even from members of the Theosophical Society, including close workers with her like Dr. Bhagavan Das. But she never retaliated. She never reacted to those attacks. I was told, Mr. Sundaram, the former General Secretary of the Indian section, shared with me a passage from Dr. Bhagavan Das that he had a very serious difference of opinion with her when Dr. Besant announced Krishna Ji as the vehicle of the world teacher. He couldn't accept that. And he did write some harsh criticisms in the magazine of the Indian section. Anyhow, the years went on, and there was an occasion where Dr. Bhagavan Das was very seriously ill in Benares, and she was very busy during the day, but during the night she would go to Dr. Bhagavan Das' house and help his wife to nurse him, to take care of him all night. And the book Annie Besant in India shows a photograph. It's the last photograph of Dr. Bhagavan Das carrying the ashes of Dr. Besant to be taken to a boat into the Ganga River. And after the ashes were immersed, his son said to him, there seems to be something that you don't know, but when you were very seriously ill, the person who was helping mother in nursing you was Dr. Besant. And Dr. Bhagavan Das was overtaken by emotion and said, you are telling this to me just after I have immersed her ashes into the Ganga. One question that we need to ask ourselves most seriously is it possible not to react? Why do we react? And what kind of relationships we would create if we don't react? We have the example of Dr. Besant. She gladly gives credit for whatever is best in them, in the workers, and readily forgives and forgets all injuries done to herself. Thousands in all parts of the world have been helped by the light of the divine wisdom which she has spread in royal measure through her books, writings, and speeches. The lives of many others have been changed utterly, reshaped by her example and her precept. Innumerable persons have been helped by her suggestions, advice, and guidance in the choices they had to make in life and along the lines of their own special activity. The whole world has been uplifted more than most people can realize by her wonderful self-sacrifice. To those who have had the privilege of knowing her intimately, she is indeed like a star shining with steadfast splendor and beauty, guiding and inspiring men to all kinds of beautiful aims and activities, to be followed through the darkness and storm, as well as the calm and fair weather of this life and of lives to come. Thinking of her, what wish or prayer will be more deeply voiced forth by the hearts of her followers than that all blessings from all quarters of space may ever rest upon and surround their beloved chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Pedro, for giving us this wonderful present of listening to the testimonies of those who had the privilege and the honor to work close to a human being as Annie Besant. And testimonies that allows us to have an idea of all the phases of her work and great influence for India and the society of her time in different levels. For sure, her teachings and existence has been of great inspiration for all of them and for most of us here present. So thank you very much for this inspiration that you give us today.
Welcome.
Now, to continue with our program, we will present two videos that Sister Jayashree Kannan from the Archives of the Theosophical Society has very generously shared with us. One is a Sanskrit song dedicated to Annie Besant, and the other is an Adyar song that was presented 2 years ago during Annie Besant's celebration here at the international headquarters before the pandemic's last celebration that we had in person here 2 years back in 2019. The first song that we are going to listen now is a Sanskrit song entitled Jaya Vasanta, Jaya Vasanta. It is a raga folk tune composed by Sri Ramasubha Iyer, a scholar who worked in the Adyar library for a number of years. And the songs says, victory to you, servant of the Lord of the world. India and the world pays homage to your purifying feet. By nature pure and unblemished, you are blessed in your work for India's welfare. So I'll share both the videos.
जय वसंत जय वसंत लोकनाथ सेविनी जय वसंत लोकनाथ सेविनी भारतादि सकल लोक भारतादि सकल लोक सेव्यमान पावनांग्रे सेव्यमान पावनांग्रे जय वसंत लोकनाथ सेविनी स्वतो निरंजन निरंजनी स्वतो निरंजन निरंजनी भारतीय राजकीय भारतीय राजकीय कार्यनिरत भाग्यशालिनी कार्यनिरत भाग्यशालिनी जय वसंत लोकनाथ सेविनी लोकनाथ सेविनी
After listening to this so inspiring song with the beautiful voice of Sister Jayashri, and now I invite Shika for the vote of thanks and the closing prayer. Please, Shika.
Thank you, Catalina. And now we come to the closing session of today's gathering, celebrating the 174th birth anniversary of Dr. Annie Besant, often called the Diamond Soul. Although all of us would like to keep hearing more and more about Dr. Besant's life, especially from Brother Pedro, but we must stick to the duration allotted, and therefore, on behalf of the Theosophical Society, ADIAR, I extend heartfelt gratitude to Brother Pedro Oliveira for sharing his research on Dr. Annie Besant, spreading over many years in a very short time, although a selected part, in the most interesting and inspiring manner. There are a lot of messages of good wishes and gratitude from the delegates for Brother Pedro in the chat box. If I read one, it will not be fair to others. And if I start reading all the messages, we'll very well go beyond our time. So on behalf of all the attendees too, I thank you, Brother Pedro, for conducting today's valuable session. It was very nice to hear about Dr. Annie Besant from you today. Also, I extend gratitude to Sister Jayashri Kannan for sharing the song on Dr. Besant in a melodious voice, and Sister Maria Atma for sharing historical information of immense value through photographs. Also, we would like to thank all the participants, not only from India, but from all over the world, not only in Zoom, but on YouTube also, who made this online gathering special by their virtual presence and good wishes. Those of you who missed today's session or wish to watch it again can view the same on the YouTube channel of the Theosophical Society, ADIAR. And now coming to the end of the session, having received the benediction by being together in each other's presence and listening to several uplifting testimonies from Dr. Besant's life by Brother Pedro, let us share the peace and bliss that we might have experienced during today's gathering with the whole manifestation by using all our will and thought power. Oh, May all be happy. May all be peaceful. May all see auspiciousness everywhere. May none fall ill. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. And before we close the webinar, we are going to share a small inspiring video about Dr. Annie Besant, at the end of which we will close the webinar. Hope you like and enjoy the video. Namaste. Okay, Maria.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria and Shikar and Catalina, for everything.
Thanks to you, really.
Thanks to you.
Good day to each one of who are here and there.
And one day we will meet at Adyar again.
Oh, please.
Sure, definitely.
Yes, welcome anytime it will be possible. We will be ready. Great. Now, bye-bye.
Very good.
Namaste. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, I stop it.